What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we are going to be building the Battle Master Fighter, and obviously there are a million different ways that you can do this, but I wanted to offer a very interesting and powerful way to do it with thrown weapons that might be a little bit of a different take. And you may see the typical run up with a sword, trip attack, and then a bunch of stuff with advantage. You could have a ranged option with a crossbow or a bow and deal a bunch of damage that way. We're going with a very strange strategy, and we're gonna make it really effective, actually. So I hope you guys are looking forward to it. If so, go ahead and leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch the channel are not subscribed, so please don't be one of those people. Help us to reach our goal of 2,000 by the end of this year. With all of the recent support we have been getting on the channel, it's been awesome. We are on track to get there before then, and I would love to get there by Thanksgiving if we could, but I obviously need your help to get there. And then of course, make sure that you click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded, and share the video with your friends. So if you haven't seen Tuesday's video, of course we did our ranking on Tuesday, so make sure to check that out up in the icon above right there. We gave this a 10 out of 10. This is an absolutely amazing subclass that can deal a bunch of damage, but more importantly gives you a lot of versatility in what it is that you can do. There's fear effects, there is maneuvering yourself and allies around on the battlefield, there is adding to your initiative, there is adding to stealth, there is adding to certain situations in social climates. There's all kinds of ways that you can use this effectively. Obviously today's focus is going to be in combat, but just know that you could end up taking this a different direction should you want to. So without any further ado, let's get into our thrown weapon build. Starting off, of course, we talk about our race. And I wanted to do something different this week. And I'm going to do something a little, I guess controversial might be the word for it. My best option for this build would be a custom lineage. Now, obviously custom lineage is super normal. A bunch of people take custom lineage, but what I would suggest is taking something that is a half elf, half something else. Now, I am fully aware that not every table will allow this, and so I'm going to give some alternate suggestions at the end with our honorable mentions. Personally, I'm allowed to do this at my table, but I'm aware that I'm in the minority. So when I take this custom lineage, I want to make sure that I am able to take the Elven Accuracy feat, because that is going to be a huge part of what it is that we are going to be doing in this build in order to make sure that we hit all of our attacks pretty much. Custom lineage technically is not an elf, but you could say that you are of an elven lineage, and so technically you could, but technically you can't, and so it's really up to your DM. If your DM allows this, great, follow the build as it is. If your DM does not allow this, then basically just make sure that your feats just come one feat slot later. It's not a huge deal. You'll just get some feats a little bit later than what I do, but eventually you'll get all of the features. You just will miss out on one ASI at the very end. It's not a huge deal overall. So yeah, we'll talk about other races that you can take at the very end of the video with our honorable mentions. But just all of that to say, custom lineage that is part elf. The way that I justified this whenever I played this build, I played this build actually last Christmas in a Christmas one-shot that we did. At my table, we did a Polar Express themed build, and one of my players ran that one-shot. We do basically every few months, one of the players runs a one-shot, and this one was Polar Express themed, and I played one of Santa's former elves, part of the former elf guard. So this is how I was an elf, but not an elf in the sense that D&D normally considers elves to be, and so that's what it was. This build is kind of a burst build, but it's also really good at sustained damage as well. So it's just a really solid build all around, and I had a lot of fun putting this together. When I played it, it was only at level 5 for the one shot, but now I'm obviously getting to flesh it out even more, and I'm really excited to do that. For our stats, of course, we do modified standard array here on the channel. Of course, if you do point by or regular standard array, rolled stats, whatever it is, just focus on the top 3 stats for us, and then the rest of them are just kind of pick what you want. But we're going to want to really focus in on the top 3. I'm going to put our 17 into dexterity, 15 into constitution, 13 into intelligence, 12 wisdom, 10 strength, 8 charisma. Like I said, the wisdom, strength, and charisma, it doesn't really matter what you take there. Just take the best scores that you can on each of those. And so I'm going to put my +2 from custom lineage into my dexterity. And I'm also taking for my free feat at level 1, elven accuracy, like what I said I was going to. And so I get a +1 in dexterity from that, which gives me a 20 right off the bat. At your table, you may not be able to do this, so you might be behind one, or you may be at a 17, you may be at an 18 at this point. Whatever it is, you may just have to feel it out a little bit at your table. But for our purposes, we're already at a 20, which is really, really awesome. For our equipment, of course, I'm going to take some studded leather armor as early as I possibly can. I do not need any armor that is medium armor. I do not need heavy armor on this build. Don't need it because our dexterity is so high. We're much better off taking this light armor. I'm going to take a shield, and so with all of this, that starts us out as at a 20 AC. That's awesome. That's really, really, really nice. We are not going to be terribly far away from our enemies. We're not going to be quite in melee, but we're also not going to be far enough away to where they can't reach us. And so we may have to take a hit or two here and there. And so having that really high AC is really, really good. And as far as your weapons go, I need a bunch of darts and I need a bunch of nets. Now, I want to talk a little bit about why darts. I've had people ask me, what is the difference really between a dart and a dagger? They work roughly the same, right? They both are thrown, they both are finesse, so you can use dex with it, you can do all this stuff. The difference is that a dart is a ranged weapon and a dagger is a melee weapon. Both of them can be thrown, but there is a big difference here. The dart, being a ranged weapon, can benefit from several things that we are wanting to take, namely the archery fighting style. Not that that is, a shocker there that we're going to be taking the archery fighting style because it's really good, but also feats like sharpshooter, which we also are going to be taking. If it is a melee weapon that we are throwing, then we do not get to add any of these extras on top of it because it only works with ranged weapons. So it has to be darts. So keep that in mind. Buy as many darts as you can. I think they're like 5 copper a piece. They're super cheap, as opposed to daggers, which are way more expensive anyway. So yeah, definitely take some nets and some darts, and we are going to go to town with that, and we will talk about all of that good stuff here in just a second. Let's go ahead and start taking some levels here. At level 1, we are of course starting as a fighter, and we are actually going to be fighter almost the entire time on this build. We're doing very light multi-classing in the middle, and that's it. We're going to be mostly fighter because I really want all of the fun fighter things. So we are going to get our fighting style here, and of course we are not choosing archery. I know I just talked about getting the archery fighting style, but yet I'm not taking it here. What we're taking is the thrown weapon fighting style, and this is essential. There are a couple of reasons why. Number 1, it adds +2 to our damage on thrown weapons. That's awesome. If that was all we got, I don't know if I would focus in on it. But there is an important part of this that comes with it that doesn't sound all that crazy on paper, but in practice it is very important. We get to draw and attack with a weapon in the same attack. Normally, if you're holding a weapon in your hand, you can attack by throwing it and then draw one weapon and throw it as attack, extra attack. However, now your hand is empty. And so if you were going to make another attack on your next turn, you can draw that first weapon and throw it, but you can't draw another weapon. You can only draw a weapon once in your turn. So there you are throwing out your extra attack feature once we get to level 5. That's not good. That is not something we want to be dealing with. So this allows you to draw and attack in the same action that we are using for the attack action. That is huge, and it is way more important that we take this now rather than taking the archery fighting style here in just a few levels. This is way more useful for us. We also get Second Wind, which is a nice little heal, and that is going to scale pretty nicely for us because we are, of course, taking almost all of our levels in Fighter. At Fighter 2, we get Action Surge, and this is going to allow us to make another action on our turn. For now, it's just going to be 2 attacks total, or if you want to take another action, that's fine, but that's pretty much it. So right now we're still just doing some normal fighting things. We can throw some darts. They're all D4s, so our damage is not going to be as good on this as it might be on some other builds, but this is going to scale up pretty quickly. Next up at level 3, we get to choose our subclass, and of course, this is the Battlemaster video, so we are going with the Battlemaster. With this, of course, we get 3 Battlemaster maneuvers from the list that we discussed on Tuesday, and I have a few options that I really want. One that is absolutely required is the Quick Toss maneuver. Quick Toss, of course, for a refresher from Tuesday, allows us to make a bonus action attack with a thrown weapon, and then we get to add a bonus to the damage roll equal to a roll of our superiority die. That's really nice. This allows us to make 1 extra attack. However, we're going to use this in a slightly different way. I want to use this to make our net attack. Now, here's the thing about nets. Nets are weird. Nets are very weird. They are a really great way to restrain a target and thereby gain advantage, which again would proc our Elven accuracy at this point. But the way nets work is that you can only make 1 attack regardless of the total number of attacks you normally would be able to make as part of your action, reaction, or bonus action. What this means is that if we were to use our action to throw the net, we would be throwing extra attack out the window. You can't throw the net and then throw a dart. Doesn't work that way. However, you only get 1 action or bonus action anyway as part of your bonus action. Therefore, this doesn't compete with anything. So I'm going to use my bonus action to quick toss our net, and that is going to be fantastic. Now, it does say that you can add a D8 to the damage roll. There is no damage roll with a net. Nets do 0 damage. So I've seen some DMs give a D8 as the damage from the net, and you say you have like a barbed net. I've seen some people allow you to add it to the roll to hit. And I've seen some people say you can't roll the superiority die at all, it's just expended. I personally read it as it is expended and nothing happens since there was no damage roll. If your DM will allow you to do something different, that's up to your DM. But I read it as basically the die is wasted, but you can throw the net as your bonus action, and then you're going to get 1 dart attack at advantage with Elven accuracy adding on to that, of course. So talk to your DM about that. I know some people do it differently, but that's just how I do it. As far as other maneuvers, precision attack is great for being able to make sure that you do hit, which is fantastic. And then I would take one that allows you to deal extra damage on your hits. So something like menacing attack is really what comes to my mind. It, of course, allows you to add a little bit of a fear effect, possibly, which is nice. But more importantly, it allows you to add extra damage. And so we're going to be wanting to pile on this damage all at once for our Nova round at the very beginning. So next up at Fighter 4, we're continuing with Fighter. Normally I would multi-class here, but I need to get to extra attack as fast as possible. At Fighter 4, we're taking Sharpshooter. And Sharpshooter actually solves one more issue that nets have. Nets have a normal range of 5 feet and a long range of 15 feet, meaning that if you attack at 5 feet, there's no disadvantage. But if you attack at further than 5 feet, there is a disadvantage on your attack. However, the problem with this is we are making a ranged attack within 5 feet of the enemy if we do it on the short range, which means we have disadvantage on the attack. So that's a problem. Therefore, Sharpshooter is going to help us. If we are 10 or 15 feet away from the opponent, then we no longer suffer disadvantage on that throw, which is awesome. And this will allow us, of course, now to benefit from Elven accuracy should you get advantage on that first one, which later on we are going to. For now, it's a normal hit on the net, and then should the net hit, then we will have advantage on all of the subsequent attacks. We will get the advantage a little bit later, and we'll get to that in just a minute. At Fighter 5, we of course get extra attack, and this, of course, 2 attacks is always better than 1, and so we now are essentially doubling our damage. We can pour a Battlemaster maneuver into each of our attacks. Should it be precision attack, should you go to miss, or more optimally, menacing attack. That way we can cause a fear effect, and we can possibly cause some extra damage to happen over that course, which is really, really awesome. At Fighter 6, of course, we get an extra ASI or a feat here, and I'm going to go with Fighting Initiate and, of course, pick up the archery fighting style. This now gives us a flat +2 to all of our hits. That's with the net, that's with the darts, that's with all of our things, which is going to be really, really awesome when we are making all of these attacks. It's going to make sure that we are hitting pretty much every time. And we've got a pretty decent chance to crit because we are attacking at double advantage all the time. So let's just take a second to look at what damage we are dealing right now. We're dealing a lot of damage already. And normally when I do a lot of my builds, they take a long time to come online. And I've seen the comments of, well, if it takes 10 levels for it to come online, then why would I play it? One, because not all of them are optimized like this one kind of is. But two, that's also part of the fun of it. This one, I just have a really fun way to get it off the ground really early. But the problem with this one is that it plateaus after the first few levels. So this is a lot better of an early game type of build rather than a late game type of build like what I normally go with. But just something to keep in mind. But as far as damage goes right now, we're doing pretty well, right? So on our bonus action, we're going to quick toss and throw the net. I'm going to assume we are dealing 0 damage with the net because it just doesn't make sense that we're going to be getting damage on that. If you can deal damage with it, perfect. That's awesome. Lucky you. But that is not something that I'm going to assume in my math here. We then get to make 4 attacks: attack, extra attack, action surge, attack, extra attack, at advantage with Elven Accuracy procking, all of them with sharpshooter going off. And it's going to be amazing. So we have a D4 for our weapon. We have a +5 from our dex, a +10 from sharpshooter, and then we have D8s on 3 of the 4 hits because we had to use 1 of them for quick toss. So we have 3 of those 4 hits getting an extra D8 of damage. Of course, we have a high chance to crit, so you could crit and deal a bunch of extra damage. But with all of that in there, you're going to be dealing roughly 90 damage or so on that burst round, which is kind of nuts here at level 6. Level 6 is very early to be dealing 90 some damage, and it's just super satisfying. And even then, like, you know, it feels kind of rough to blow all of your Battlemaster maneuvers at once. But even then, though, you still can do this over and over and over again, and you're just losing out on all of your Battlemaster maneuvers. You can't net as your bonus action, which is unfortunate on subsequent attacks, so just be careful when you do this. But I mean, it's still really, really fun to deal all of this damage, and you might be able to find ways to gain advantage in other ways later on. And we will get to that here in just a little bit. So at level 7, though, we start to look elsewhere. Now, when I originally did this build, and I had spec'd it out for the one shot, I had a different vision for where the build would have gone. Originally, this build would have gone for a ranger dip and done some things there. However, I have decided to not do that for this build. I will talk about why ranger is an awesome option in the honorable mentions. So I've got a lot to talk about at the very end of the video, so make sure you stick around. And I've also seen a lot of people who have thought about stuff similar to this and gone with something like the rogue. I considered rogue as well, but I think that what I've done here is just a little bit better for consistency as we start to reach the next tier of play. And I have gone with an Artificer dip. I know I just did Artificer back with the Arcane Archer, link in the iCard above up there, but I think it fits really well with what it is we're trying to do. It is not a deep dip at all, but I think it really, really helps us out a lot. And I think it's a lot of fun, actually. So at Artificer 1, we are going to, of course, get Magical Tinkering and Spell Casting. Magical Tinkering, of course, you can make little things that make little noises or smells or sounds, whatever it is you want to do. But Spell Casting is a little more important. I would take things such as Mage Hand and Mending. The reason I like Mending on this build is because it allows you to fix your nets when someone cuts it up, right? Nets are not the easiest thing to come by, and so not everybody's going to have one available for when all of yours get destroyed. This can allow you to keep reusing them over and over and over again and fix them as people cut out of them. The DC to get out of a net is very low, and the AC of it is low. It has low hit points. They're going to get destroyed a lot if things survive your initial onslaught of damage. So you're gonna want to have a reliable way to fix them so you're not having to always be searching for new ones. Then as far as our spells go, I would take something like Absorb Elements. That gives us a really nice defensive feature here. And then things like Disguise Self and False Life are pretty nice. We're not going to really be focusing on spellcasting on this because we're not going to have time to really boost our intelligence anymore. We just kind of have the bare minimum to multi-class into this, and that's about it. So I wouldn't focus on anything that deals with your intelligence modifier because it's not going to get any better than a 13. At Artificer 2, though, we get Infuse Item. And so now we only need our one lucky dart because we are going to infuse that with the returning item Infusion. This gives you a bonus of a +1 to hit and to damage of a single thrown weapon. Of course, we're going to choose our favorite dart in the whole wide world, whichever one that happens to be. And you can now throw that. It deals magical damage with a +1 bonus, and it comes back in your hand. Obviously, this does trivialize the thrown weapon fighting style that we had as far as being able to draw over and over, but you're still getting the +2 bonus to damage. So you're still getting that bonus on top of everything. The bigger thing is the fact that we are now level 8. Level 8 is right in the realm of where you're going to start running into a ton of creatures that have resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Of course, you're dealing almost entirely piercing damage unless you have some kind of other weapon that you are stowing on you. This allows you to get around that resistance. Otherwise, if we had gone with something like the Ranger or the Rogue or something like that, that's great, but our weapon attacks aren't magical, and therefore we're going to run into some resistance with that. This allows us to not have to worry about it. And that's why I think this is a really valuable way to go with this, because otherwise, I mean, how many people are selling magical darts? I mean, really, right? If you find them, great, use those and use a different infusion. I've got some other ones that I would bring here just in case, and switch out for another infusion, and you just keep doing what you're doing, and that'd be great. As far as other infusions go, I would take something like Enhanced Defense, should you want to put that on your shield and make your defense even better, and also Homunculus Servant. Homunculus Servant is one that I would take over defense most of the time, unless you find magical darts, in which I would just throw out the returning weapon, in which case I would just have defense and your servant. So what the servant can do is take the help action. And yes, we did a similar thing a few weeks ago with Arcane Archer, but it can take the help action. This will give you advantage on your attack with the net, because the net is the first thing that you are doing. So that's awesome. So now we can apply our Elven Accuracy to hit with the net. That makes it a lot more likely for us to hit there. Obviously, we're not taking the sharpshooter loss to hit on the net, but still, it's nice. It's nice to have all the help we can get. If you're anything like me and you roll really, really low all the time, then this is a lifesaver, and I would absolutely bring this. So I think that's really, really fun. And that's really all I need from Artificer, to be honest. I think that going any deeper is kind of a waste. Yes, you could go one more level and pick up something like Armorer. I don't think Armorer is worth it on this build just because we don't really need the extra versatility that comes with that. You could go Artillerist, which I think is probably your best option overall, because then you've got your bonus action to either give a bunch of temporary HP, or you've got a bonus action of a 2d8 force cannon at range, which gives you a really good long range option. Or you could have the fire cannon. All of the cannons would be fine here. And I think that's what I would recommend over this, because I mean, once we use our quick toss, the only bonus action thing we really have reliably is going to be our second wind, which is only going to be once. So that could give you an interesting way to do it. So definitely consider going Artillerist. That would be the way I would go on this build. But so now I want to go back to fighter, because I want to pick up all of the other fun things that we get as a fighter, and I want to make sure that we can get to, at level 20, I want to get our improved combat superiority up to a D12 on our maneuvers. And so that is exactly what we are going to do. At Fighter 7, we get Know Your Enemy, which is somewhat situational, but not completely useless. It's fine. You just have to manufacture some situations sometimes. And we also get one more superiority die, and we also get 2 more maneuvers. I would probably take something like Goading Attack and Maneuvering Attack, especially with our AC being what it is. I think that's a really, really nice thing to bring to the table there. At Fighter 8, we get an ASI or a feat. I think the best thing that we can do is to bump our Constitution and Intelligence, just because I don't really need the Resilient feat for Constitution, because I already have the bonus to that for concentration checks. So I'm just going to take a +1 and +1. So if you wanted to branch out with your spells, you could, but I mean, it's fine. There's not really another feat that I really want all that badly that also buffs our Constitution, so I'm cool with just taking a +1/+1. At Fighter 9, we get our first round of Indomitable, so that allows us to reroll a saving throw, which is really good. At Fighter 10, of course, we get our improved combat superiority up to a D10 on our maneuvers. Of course, this is going to only buff our damage on that initial burst round. We have more of them now, so now we're no longer missing out on a maneuver on that final attack, which is good. So we're just adding an extra 1d10 to that initial burst round, which is really good. And of course, we also get 2 more maneuvers. At this point, I've got everything I want, so pick your favorite, whatever you want to do. And this is kind of where we run into the problem of this thing kind of leveling off, right? This hits a plateau pretty hard, and there's not a ton I can do. We could do some multi-classing, of course, with Rogue. And of course, Rogue would allow us to have some sneak attack. We could, of course, go with something like the Gloomstalker Ranger, which would give us a bonus on the first round of combat. But I mean, we're not always going to be able to set up our ability to deal a bunch of damage on that, and I don't have the space to buff our wisdom. We could have done a +1/+1 for Constitution and Wisdom last round, but I don't think that's worth it. So overall, it just makes the build a lot messier, and I think this just kind of simplifies everything down. At Fighter 11, we get our second round of extra attack, so now our damage has gone up by quite a bit, because now, of course, we are attacking 2 more times, counting Action Surge, of course, on that burst round, which is going to be a ton of fun and a lot of damage. At Fighter 12, we get another feat or ASI, and I would take... This is a tough one for me. At level 12, you could do a few things. Number 1, you could go ahead and buff your Constitution for more hit points. That's not really particularly what I want, but you could do that. You could take the Poisoner feat. Now, the Poisoner feat is going to be a little interesting because you have to dip a bunch of different types of ammo, and you would want to have this ready before combat starts. Poison only lasts for a minute, which I think is really dumb. But so basically you would draw your magic weapon, throw it, hope they fail the really low DC Constitution saving throw, which they're probably going to pass. If they are to fail it, then you deal 2d8 extra damage and they're poisoned, which is really good, but they probably also would have been really good at really low level. And nowadays, I don't think it really is going to make as big of a difference. The other option you could take is the Piercer feat, and Piercer gives us a little bit more of an option here based around us getting crits. Of course, we're rolling with double advantage, and so we're going to be getting crits semi-often, which is good. Now, obviously, we're throwing out the +1 bonus to dexterity, which kind of sucks, but I mean, I really don't want to give up having a 20 in our main stat at level 1 if I don't have to. And I can't move around the +1 from Elven Accuracy or else I don't get the benefit from it. So I'm really locked into where I'm at. So you could take Piercer there and just not get the dex bonus. That's something you could do as well. So there's a few options for you. At Fighter 13, we get our second round of Indomitable, which is great. And then at Fighter 14, another ASI or feat. I would just buff Constitution here just for some extra hit points, but there are, of course, other options you could take if you wanted to. You could take the blind fighting style by taking Fighting Initiate once again, because, I mean, you're going to be within 10 feet of a lot of things, and so if you run into some problems there, that could be an option for you. At level 15, we get Relentless, so we're going to get back 1 maneuver as we roll initiative if we're out. This is cool because then that'll give us access to Quick Toss once again, which will allow us to burst once again just without the extra superiority. And we get another 2 maneuvers. Again, pick your favorites, whatever you want to do. And of course, we get 1 more superiority die overall. At Fighter 16, we get another ASI or a feat. I'm just going to bump Constitution once again. Of course, if you are behind on ASIs because your stat array is different than mine, this is your chance to get that caught up. Of course, it's very late in the build, but I want to get this as front-loaded as I possibly can. At Fighter 17, level 19 overall, we get Action Surge twice, and we get Indomitable 3 times total. And finally, at Fighter 18, we get our improved combat superiority, where our maneuvers are now fueled by D12s rather than D10s. So that is all for today's build, but I want to talk about our damage numbers a little bit, and I also want to talk about our honorable mentions. So as far as damage goes, if we were to go at an enemy and just pour everything we can at it, and it fails all of its saving throws for Poisoner, should we have taken that, which is very unlikely, but let's just assume that for numbers, you're looking at around 200 damage in that first round, or whatever round you decide to blow everything at once, which is pretty insane, right? I think that this is an absolutely incredible amount of damage. Obviously, it's a little bit later on in the build, but it's still really, really fun. And I think that you will have an absolutely amazing time dealing all of this damage up at the beginning. And I think it's fun. It's great. If you go with the magical dart version where you're throwing it over and over and over again, obviously you have a little bit of a better bonus to hit, and it is slightly made up for on the loss from the poison, but obviously that poison is going to rack up over time, because, I mean, at late level, you are going to have 6 possible poison darts because it's based on your proficiency bonus, which means you're going to be able to be making 6 attacks, all of those with poison. And so if it were to fail all of that, obviously that's 2d8 times 6, which is a lot of damage. So if you do the magical dart route, you're looking at a little over 160 damage. And of course, that's not counting crits, which you have about a 14% chance to crit with Elven Accuracy. So overall, you're doing really good. And of course, your crits are going to propel you far beyond that. And if you took the Piercer feat, I would probably take that Piercer over the Poisoner if you're taking the magical route, because I think it's going to end up helping you out in the long run a little bit more. As far as our honorable mentions, let's start with classes. Of course, I talked about the Ranger. Of course, the Ranger is a really nice 3-level dip to get Gloomstalker. The only thing is that we would have had to, of course, use Wisdom over Intelligence, which is fine, but we would get a bonus to our initiative equal to our Wisdom mod, and we would get an extra little bit of damage added onto it if we were to go before the opponent, which is really nice. And we would get an extra attack on that, which we could then action surge for and be dealing 6 attacks at that point as well, which is really, really busted, right? Very, very strong option to go with. If that were the case, I don't know if I would have maintained Elven Accuracy or not, just because the damage numbers would have been really nice with a Bugbear, which we'll talk about here in just a second. That would have been really, really nice, but I do think that overall having the Elven Accuracy is really the way to go overall. And then of course the Rogue. The Rogue would be really nice, especially the Assassin actually on this one, because again, if you're going before your opponent, you can just go absolutely ham on them and you're going to be dealing a ton of damage. This would give you advantage on every enemy that has not gone yet, and so then you wouldn't need the setup round of letting your Homunculus Servant give you advantage for the net attack. You just have it. And that's really awesome. So you don't have to worry about having advantage. You just have it because of the Assassin subclass. And then of course, if you were to get surprised, which is going to happen like never, then you would just crit everything and you would just murder that thing all in one go, which would be absolutely nuts. So definitely an option, but much more situational, I feel. As far as other races go, I told you I would talk about other races here, and I wanted to mention the Mark of Shadow Elf for the ability to have a couple of extra spells in here, among other things, or the Half Elf with the Drow lineage. The Drow lineage, of course, would give us access to some really awesome magic as well, and I think the magic really fits with the Drow, of course, giving us that kind of sneaky quality of being able to close the distance to get within 10 or 15 feet of our opponent and be able to throw that net over them, which I think is really cool. Of course, if you were to take something like invisibility, then that would give you advantage and you wouldn't need the Homunculus Servant to jump in at that point either. I'm just trying to give you a bunch of different options of ways to gain advantage on that net attack, because that's really the only weakness that we have, because if we burn our quick toss to throw and we miss, then that's damage that we're missing out on that burst round, because then we're gonna have to wait to do the bursting until after we actually get them caught in the net, just to make sure that everything lands. So that's one way I'm trying to get around this a little bit. As far as other feats go, obviously I mentioned the duality of Poisoner and Piercer. Those are both really good. Tough feat, of course, is always a really nice one, just because you are up in people's faces a lot. At least you're really close to them. One final one that you could think about is Crossbow Expert or the Gunner feat. Now you would only use one part of this feat, so that's why I didn't include it, and so it seems like a little bit of a mediocre pick, but it would give you the ability to get around that disadvantage within 5 feet of you, so you could be right up in somebody's face and throw the net and dart if you are right up next to them. I personally think Sharpshooter gives me enough versatility of being at either 10 or 15 feet away where I'm cool with it, but if you really wanted to be up in somebody's face, or if something is really aggressive and is up in your face, then this gives you a way to lock them down and then run away afterwards, because they're restrained and they're not going to be able to make an effective opportunity attack, which is really, really awesome. So that is our build for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Of course, next week we are talking about the Cavalier Fighter. We're going to take our horse and ride it till we can't no more. And I hope you guys are looking forward to that, because I certainly am. Until next week, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.